we're so in love with the technology, but we need to understand how do we articulate the impact that they're trying to make in terms of things like competitiveness, economic growth, job creation. Yeah. Exactly.
Hey folks, Phil here with Blockchain North. Interview number 179, feels like it. It's been a busy day. I'm here with Randall Baran-Chong from NorthStar DAO. Why don't you give us your 30-second sort of why, first of all? Why?
Sure.
And then we'll talk about NorthStar DAO specifically. Sure. What's the problem?
Well, for the grassroots builders in the ecosystem, so, the startup founders, the investors, the creators, they don't have a voice when it comes to policy and regulation. There's a lot of great organizations out there like Canada Web3 Council, Canadian Blockchain Consortium, who are doing great work for their membership.
Yeah.
But the folks that are at the kind of grassroots level, they don't have a government relations firm. They don't have in-house counsel to help them influence policy and shape policy. But within that ecosystem, we have a lot of brilliant minds building great things. So we want to give voice to those kind of voiceless constituency at all three levels of government.
Okay, and so why is a DAO the best way to do that?
Well, decentralized people need a decentralized system that helps enable them to have their voice heard. At the moment, we're kind of more of like a DAO in name only because we're functioning more to use kind of the pool of resources and our kind of thinking to help shape policy, but we don't necessarily use the technology platforms because oftentimes that could be a barrier for participation. We've expanded the tent to include more emerging tech folks, so they're not necessarily all Web3 natives, yeah.
Okay. So you launched a year ago. We did an interview exactly here. I think you were sitting here, I was sitting there. What has happened over the last year with NorthStar DAO?
Yeah, we've been really focusing on making responses to these kind of policy consultations, right? Again, bringing voice to the kind of, regulators, to these, departments, to these ministers, and having the voice of grassroots organizations. So we made responses to those. We've been hosting events to really educate the grassroots founders on how to create a political constituency, right? Right now, they don't really necessarily understand how is it they think about policy. How is it that they can, translate what they're doing to speak the love languages, as I call it, of policymakers and regulators? Because we're so in love with the technology, but we need to understand how do we articulate the impact that they're trying to make, in terms of things like competitiveness, economic growth, job creation. Yeah. Exactly. And all those other kind of policy priorities they have. So we're trying to help them understand that mindset shift and how to articulate themselves better.
We've also organized a bunch of events. I've unfortunately missed them. I think I was sick for one of them and I'm just not in town for the other. But and you've organized them around debate night. So that's not by coincidence, of course.
Yeah, we did a watch party for the Trump-Biden debate, which was very fun. We had bingo cards. And it's just really fun to have people engaged in, policy. And it's really interesting to see the enthusiasm. And we've seen, especially in the United States, that, both parties have started to kind of coalesce around crypto, right? Even I think Kamala tonight is doing a Crypto for Kamala event.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I believe it's being hosted by Mark Cuban.
Okay.
So
today is August 14th, by the way, if people want to look back at it.
It would have already happened, yeah. But yeah, and obviously, Donald Trump spoke at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville. So it's clearly becoming more part of the narratives and even the platforms, which was unheard of before.
Yeah. So what's the roadmap for you guys for the next, let's say, 1 or 2 years?
Yeah. So we're working our roadmap backwards from the election that's supposed to happen in 2025 in Canada. So we're trying to think of, okay, if it has to happen as late as October of 2025, how do we start to form a policy perspective, so through a policy paper, and present that to the leaders of the different parties so that it can be incorporated as part of the platform? Again, ensuring that that voice is heard and helping shape it. And if you think about the grassroots founders, those are the people that are building at the leading edge. Those are the, embryonic unicorns to be, right? And we need to create the conditions so that they have the investment, they have the regulations and the policies that help them decide to stay and grow here in Canada instead of, fleeing to other countries, as we're starting to see, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know you're very sort of politically astute. I've spoken to you a few times before. What is your sense of the politics of crypto in Canada? Because oftentimes we follow the U.S. and like you just said, the U.S. is kind of making a pretty big pivot this year, at least in words. We'll see how that translates once they are in power in January next year. But what are your expectations for Canada, politically speaking, as it pertains to crypto?
Well, generally speaking, it's best to have no expectations and just to be pleasantly surprised. There are certainly members of parliament who are espousing the kind of the virtues of blockchain technology and Web3 technology.
Can you name a few?
MP Lightbound.
Yeah, Lightbound.
Absolutely. Ben Lobb, who's the chair of the Conservative Caucus on Blockchain, MP Randall Garner, folks like that.
From Alberta.
You know, and even Pierre Polyev. You know, he a while ago he seemed to be a bit quieter.
He's been a bit silent since.
But again, this is where we hope that the grassroots founders understand we need to lean in more so that the politicians understand why we're helping Canadian society, right? We can't expect them to be experts on this, so it's incumbent on us to be able to articulate that back to the love languages.
Their language, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and be able to help them say, like, this is a technology we want to invest in, because, for example, what we were talking about with the AI and Ethics Roundtable was Canada committed $2.4 billion towards AI, and particularly in the compute capacity. The House Committee on Industry, Science and Technology said Canada needs a national blockchain strategy. The minister kind of, brushed it off. And so...
You think we'll ever have one?
I hope so. I think it... And again, if we are able to make the case that this is the future of the internet, and if we all subscribe to that idea, then we need to have a strategy to have an answer to how do we realize that future, right? And so we're hoping that as NorthStar DAO, we can help articulate that at the grassroots level. And we're really thinking about the use cases that speak to the kind of policy issues that MPs care about.
Yeah, I know you don't want to predict the future, but do you think a year from now, when we're in the throes of the campaign for our next prime minister, there's a lot of hope, of course, that there will be a change from a lot of Canadians. I think it's fair to say, not taking any parts, but there's a few people nodding around here that actually crypto will be in the conversation.
I think with crypto, the adoption is still relatively low. So from a constituency perspective, I think the OSC said that 10% of Canadians say that they hold crypto assets. So it's not necessarily speaking to a big...
11% after this week.
Exactly, yeah. Hopefully all in the green after. But I think one of the ways that we need to approach this is to think about how do we think about blockchain in particular? So let's say, divorcing a little bit from just the crypto reputations, and use blockchain as its intersection with AI. So ride a bit of those coattails.
Web3, as Alex Tapscott would call it.
Yes. And for example, I'll tell you one of the biggest concerns of politicians, whether it's the United States or Canada, is deepfakes, right? And so deepfakes are, generative AI is enabling the creation of all these images, and they're worried that someone's going to create something that, threatens their ability to get reelected, right? And then we can introduce how blockchain enables provenance of the creation of these, these assets to say that, it came from a legitimate source or not. And so how do we show that blockchain can prevent, that real fear of these politicians? So we need to be clever about how do we kind of bring blockchain into the conversation rather than that kind of head-on approach of crypto's the future and, this is a big asset class and we can all get rich by it.
Yeah.
Because that'll spook, from back to love languages perspective, that's what can sometimes spook the regulators who are worried about consumer protection, right?
Yeah.
When they hear that you're going to create, millionaires or you access $1 trillion markets and things like that, that scares them because they're like, can we really trust people to do this? So we need to think about the love languages. We need to think about the approaches, and we need to be clever about the kind of way that we intersect the stuff we know they do love, like the favorite child, like AI, and bring those together with blockchain.
Yeah. Well, Randy, you did not predict the future today, but you simply provided a lot of clues as to how we can leverage the love language to engage our politicians at a time when it's quite critical. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much, Philip. I appreciate it. See you again.